Liesl. Okay, well, I'm with sporting royalty right now. Which sport did you like better, sailing or basketball?
I have to say it a bit quietly in case the sailing world hears, but I am a wheelchair basketballer through and through. I was a
Love
trained
it.
athlete and they put me on a boat, and because of the training I have from basketball, I could do the boat, and I grew up on a boat. So, but in my heart, I'm an absolute wheelchair basketballer.
Well, in our hearts, you're a wheelchair basketballer as well, because we love you and we claim you very much.
And you know what? And I'm not going away, which is really exciting.
I love that. I love it. So I guess we'll just start with how many medals have you, 5, 6? How many Olympic medals have you got? You've got silvers, bronze, and gold.
I have 2 silvers and a bronze from playing wheelchair basketball.
Yep.
And that took 5 Paralympics, and we're still not quite there. And then I flipped over and I sailed in Rio and London and won, or London, then Rio, and won a gold at both. So there's 5 Paralympic medals and a whole pile of world champ medals, which are scattered into the wind. So who knows?
Yeah.
And other great, the National League and all sorts of other incredible experiences where they give you a trophy or something as well. But those 5 Paralympic medals are pure magic.
Yeah,
as you know.
Well, you work so hard for them, and I think that's sort of why they're so special, because the dedication and all the commitment and the sacrifice, that's what it amounts to in the end.
Absolutely.
Like, that's all that you've got to show for it. So it is special.
And I just need to say, it's pretty powerful having this conversation with basketball royalty yourself as well, who completely gets it too.
We both are. Look, I got to spend a bit of time with you over the weekend, obviously at Asia Cup, which was great. I guess, with basketball and wheelchair basketball, what do you see sort of the main challenges for wheelchair basketball in particular, and the women's team at the moment? And what was it like for you in the pathways when you were going through the system, through the pathways?
It's been a mega journey. I was an able-bodied kid who played rep basketball for school and then uni, and then broke my back when I was 19. So wheelchair basketball came to me by a physio when I was in hospital, and 2 buff people in wheelchairs in Prince Henry Hospital in 1988. And so back then, no one even knew what a Paralympic was. And the number of boxes of chocolates that I have melted in the back of my car with my basketball chair in it to fundraise to get to the Paralympic Games is massive. So I've come from a place where we basically paid for all of our own. Like, I hitchhiked to a training camp in the old days with my basketball chair to arrive in Adelaide to say it's been cancelled, but they'd sent me a letter, but I hadn't been home to receive the letter. So then I'm hanging out in Adelaide. And that was an adventure that I had early. I was a uni student, so I had all this time, which is a real privilege to go and stay and play in various locations around Australia and hang around a bit longer till I got back to go to uni. So I really that was sort of those foundation years, which gave me exposure to all sorts of coaches and all sorts of players back then. It was more players than the coaches, because the coaches weren't really part of our world at that stage. And then as Atlanta came, and the winner is Sydney, was just the most amazing thing. And the Paralympic Games was really exciting because for the first time ever, we had people come to watch. So opening up the tickets for the Paralympics with that $20 to get in the gate, mate, the first time ever, like in Barcelona or Atlanta, we played in front of no one. So to win that silver, or lose that gold in front of the home crowd was just absolutely phenomenal. And that was, I think, that gave Australia, the Australian Paralympic movement and wheelchair basketball, which was such a showcase sport in the Paralympic movement, a real spotlight, and took us to a new level of appreciation and support. And then that's sort of just carried on. But I think still women's sport is more disadvantaged, but then you throw wheelchair in there as well. And the small pool of players, I think, let's start a wheelchair basketball competition. It's like, well, let's find out how many players we've got to be in that competition before we say we're going to run a women's round. Or we actually, as women, set up our own women's league. When I first arrived, we played in the men's league, and that was just what we did. And the best women in Australia still play in the men's league, but we actually set up our own women's league in those early days, which is 30 plus years old now. So that's something else that we've got to make sure continues with the frustrations. I think at Basketball Australia now, it's being called a league this year, but it's only one round because we've probably misspent money that could have been invested so much more efficiently in a wheelchair game, which is not necessarily the same shaped need as an able-bodied game. So it's been an incredible journey, but I'm still there poking and pushing in the background, trying to get the best outcome for, in particular, women, but for wheelchair basketballers into the future, because I've had such an amazing opportunity to be and grow from within the sport.
Yeah, and that's so important, like to continue that advocacy work and doing that pushing and making sure that you are agitating, because representation is so important. And I think in making sure that there is those pathways and accessibility to the sport, it's so important. So keep doing that, and we will do it with you.
Yeah, and I think I want to also add on that note, like you've got a generation of players like the Evans and the Lorraines and things that have been through the system and retired, but we still don't have that many people who have been through and retired. So our top area of expertise is only just starting to emerge, of people who are no longer on the court. I'm still on the court, so I didn't want to be organising really. But we've only just getting a generation who want to see from a constructive administrative perspective to be able to push to grow our sport as well. So we've done that from the court basically the whole way, with a number of people who have been advocates for us, from especially like, and I've got to do a shout out to Lorraine Landon from the able-bodied world, who really has been instrumental. With Mike Roveski, we hosted the World Cup in 1998 at the State Sports Centre, which was the very first time we shone the light on and put wheelchair space in Australia and Basketball New South Wales.
Yeah, well, Lorraine, you know, she's been just remarkable in the sport and everything that she's done. It was great to see her presenting medals yesterday, or trophies yesterday to, I think it was the All-Star 5, but she was, you know, she's still around and she's still there working away and doing some great things. There's some incredible people in our sport. I've got just a couple of questions just about the sport itself, because I was watching, I watched during, I think it was the under-18s tournament, the wheelchair basketball, and it was awesome, and it's so physical, and it's so, like, they're highly talented kids, but what's a foul? Because I feel like it's so physical. What's actually a foul?
It is. Basically, if you crash your chair straight onto someone else's chair, it's a charge. And if you hold you've got to get an axle position in front of the front caster. So if you've got your big axle, your big wheels the axle needs to be in front of someone's front caster to have front position, so before it becomes a holding foul. So if you're trying to hold someone's chair before you get a good position, that's a holding foul. So and the other thing is that you are basically within a cylinder above your chair. So then if someone comes and reaches inappropriately into your cylinder, then that's the foul territory. And then also if you crash onto someone, it's a foul. But I mean, refereeing's tricky in the able-bodied world, and at another moving and the fast-moving wheels of the wheelchair world, I think it takes quite a while to be able to watch and perceive what that looks like. And same to photograph wheelchair basketball. Running basketball as well, but to catch those moments of rah! Yeah.
Well, just the physicality and like the wheelchairs going over and people falling over in the wheelchairs. Like, what sort of injuries? I mean, I'm sure you just get absolutely banged up, but like the injuries coming out of that.
It's interesting. When we first started to play, we didn't have an anti-tip bar on the back, so that's a fifth wheel or a sixth wheel. So the chair was really tippy. Now the chair's really stable and we're completely strapped into the chair. Right. So when we go out, the chair comes with it. So just the strength in people's arms to push your whole body weight, including your chair, back up is something else again. And I just know for me, the number of times I've gone flying out of my chair, with or without the chair on top of me, depending on what era of the game I was in, my poor old wrists are going to be challenged further down the track. And just the shoulder work and so much pushing in training, so much hill pushing, so much dragging weights, dragging people behind us, because that initial power sprint takeoff is a super important part to get that front position in both offense and defense. So yeah, lots of different shape training behind the scenes to lead to incredible physicality.
Yeah, right. So when the girls are competing, because the girls were competing with the guys in that tournament, is there a real difference in that strength? Can you, like, is it obvious as an athlete being in that position playing?
It's tough. I mean, some of the toughest, and that we held our own absolutely as the toughest women in the Australian team playing in the men's league. And at those, I think those emerging stages, until people really are setting the physicality, but girls just in general are not as physically strong, therefore not as fast. So they've got to be really tough. So it's really quite tricky. Men tend to take risks and have spinal cord injuries at the ages 18 to 24, whereas a lot of women, so those initial the under 23s are generally born with or injuries that occur in the 18 to sort of 24-year-olds. So it tends to be primarily blokes in that group. So finding enough women to have a standalone competition at that age, it happens at world level. But those women, we've got to work out how we slot them in. They come into the National League with joy and happiness, but also creating women's festivals and other competitions, because a lot of those women, the only time they ever get to play with women and against women are in a format that we actually created ourselves, which is a really nurturing space, because playing with the blokes, there ain't no nurturing going on out there.
No. And I mean, that's all sport at all levels and all ages.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you said you're still playing as well. You're still out there giving it a crack?
Oh, absolutely. It's great. We've now got the Waratah League, so there's teams across Sydney as part of the Waratah League, which is really exciting, and it brings a different shape competition. I think that's Wheelchair Sports New South Wales and Basketball New South Wales sort of making sure that that's resourced, and I absolutely love that. And then I haven't stopped playing in the Women's National League, which is just beautiful. And then it was really nice. The Gliders just played at the World Championships in Dubai a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Came sixth, which actually puts them in contention for Tokyo, which possibly they were out of. So all of us old girls were watching online with a chat space in there, like we did at the Tokyo Paralympics as well. So there's still a great big familiar, and that's what I mean. Watching you play, Loz, at the World Champs with all the retired opals, it really is a sisterhood that sits around us and beside us. That's still part of the game that will never leave.
I know, and that's probably one of the really beautiful things about our sport. It just you maintain those friendships and those relationships, and I think through the triumph and also the losses and the hard times, you've got those relationships with people. It's funny, because I am from New South Wales as well, so I just have to give Basketball New South Wales a shout out here, because they have been incredible, particularly over the last sort of 5 years or so with the World Cup and the work that they're doing in community basketball. It really is incredible.
And I'll shout that out as well. And Jana Meisens, who's part of that as well, who's come from the States, we played against each other. She played for America in 1996, and she and I have both worked on various aspects of development around the world, but Jana's now really moving in. She's working at Basketball New South Wales, which is fantastic that they've got someone that's really advocating for the wheelchair space in BNSW, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think she is as well working alongside BA, as far as I'm aware, in getting some other tournaments up or camps up and running. So that's really good.
Yep. And also we had Tina Mackenzie, who's an ex-glider, as an assistant coach at the World Champs. So it's sort of an evolutionary step, and it's really interesting. A lot of the blokes have taken pathways beside the rollers, the wheelchair men's team, but as women, we've kept working and raising kids, so we really haven't had given the time to be in that space. So this is sort of Tina Mackenzie, Alison Moses, a couple of old players are sort of stepping into that space now, which is really exciting. Just also as we bring able-bodied coaches, primarily men, into our world with expertise, but to have that knowledge of the women's wheelchair game and people and space, I think is also lovely. Absolutely.
So I guess blue sky, what would you like to see? What would you like to see for wheelchair basketball, women's wheelchair basketball in Australia?
In a perfect world, the women having the opportunity to play as many games as possible with women and against women, and shaking that up. I think I went and played professionally in the European Men's League, so I could have squillions and squillions of games. You've had the opportunity to play so many games in the States, and how do you make a player great? And I think it's not just playing training with the same players. It's playing with those players, but also with other players against other players. So you just learn to read the game for the game, rather than just be stuck in the same team playing against the other same team and the other same team. And we're down to one round of the National League this year, which really doesn't cut it as far as growing the girls' ability to compete against other players, and especially the new girls coming through.
Yeah, absolutely hear that. Wow. There is a lot of work to be done. There's no doubt.
There's a lot of work to be done, but there's also so many amazing memories shared, and that's sisterhood, and also the families that have stood beside us and been beside us. I was with your mum and dad at the World Champs and your kids, and I just know basketball's given our families a chance to connect around, nationally, and each state we go to, there's families there, but also around the world at those incredible competitions. So it really is a family of
Yeah.
of us at here, but around the world.
It is, and I remember I can't remember what Olympics it was before, but you came and talked to our Opals team just because because you're a hero, you're an icon in sport, and because of what you've achieved, right? Like, it's incredible. And I remember just feeling so like, oh my God, I can't believe she's here, sort of talking to us, and after telling us some of your stories and the things that you've been through.
That's how I feel about you.
Yeah, but that's the sort of impact that you've had on sport, and I think listening to your stories, and I can't remember which one got me. There was one that got me, and I was just like gobsmacked. I was like, holy crap, because I think, we're sort of talking in about equity and equality for women in sport, but like you said before, when you talk about women in wheelchair basketball, it's a completely different ball game, and those struggles and those barriers are so much greater than what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we sort of highlight that and sort of work together to try and change it.
Absolutely, and it really is a joy. Like, I play for the Sydney Uni Flames, so to have a really safe space that is really supportive for us in that environment is more than some of the other states have got. So finding a safe, supportive team framework is super good, and that's just a fixed thing. So that's not something we don't have to go hunting for someone else to look after us. Whose umbrella are we going under next year, which is sort of what's happening in Victoria. Queensland Sporting Wheelies, do they own basketball? Does basketball own basketball? I know the Western Australia program is really strong, but I just think, finding niches that support us and knowing, like, you've got our backs, Lorraine's got our backs, Tina's in there, Jana's in there, having a voice for us is also really important. But I think also that the brains trust of retired women now is pretty strong, and retired wheelchair basketball's pretty strong. So I think we've also got the opportunity to get like a players advocacy group together, or just to help with that decision making, because Poor Old Basketball Australia or whatever level it's at have only got so many staff and a limited thing. And if we can get some thinking and some resourcing with volunteerism beside that, I mean, we're not retired from our workplace yet, but just to help keep nudging that the right way, rather than relying on someone who might have a degree who's now coming into that world in sports background. There's so much expertise and global experience looking at what's happening around the world, but also knowing the environment across Australia as to where we can move from here to support the national programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. I like it. Well, look, obviously, She Hoops, we want to be part of that advocacy group. We want to try and support. We want to do what we can to raise the profile of the sport, but also get more competition, more opportunity, in pathways and things like that as well. So if we can help in any way, obviously, absolutely, they're conversations that we want to be a part of.
Absolutely. And I think when you guys are hosting stuff around the place, I mean, there's not going to be 50 women in wheelchairs turn up, but there might be 2 or 3. And to have a safe space for 2 or 3 women to be included and possibly touch a basketball from a wheelchair perspective for the first time ever is something that we want to make sure that's an open door, because from there we can then connect those women into other programs and link them in with mentors or coaches that are possibly close by their communities. So we need to make sure that each time that door's open, wheelchair's part of that door.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. No, it's all good.
As well as everything else, just slide it in there.
No, all good. All right, so I want to talk about where you're at now, because obviously you're a poly now. We're moved into politics. How is it? Like, what's life look like for you now? Because we've been trying to get you for months and months and months, and I've been trying to work with your assistant, and I cannot get a bloody meeting with you. This happened out of sitting next to each other. And we're now in government, which is really exciting. It's 100 days in government. I'm part of the Labor family. So when I changed from basketball to sailing, I wasn't driving to Sydney 3 nights a week, because you can't sail in the dark, and watching sailing on the screen is really, really boring. So I joined the Labor Party because I believe it shaped Australia. I never imagined doing what I'm doing now, but I just thought I wanted to give back to my community, because athletes are really selfish. And so when
the lady who was doing my job, her letter came in the post to say she had cancer and was resigning. I intuitively knew I was going to do this. I had no clue what it was, and I put up my hand. And I don't call myself a politician; I call myself a parliamentarian, because politicians have such bad connotations about it all. So now I represent the community of Gosford. I happen to use a wheelchair in the New South Wales State Parliament, which is Macquarie Street, which is the Bear Pit, and the Bear Pit is in our chamber, the Legislative Assembly, is green seats with 93 people packed in, like at question time, yelling and shouting and rah. And realistically, Loz, the preparation I've had playing wheelchair basketball in the men's teams and being part of, like, I'm just a player. I'm not a man or a woman in that space. I'm a player. And then playing in Europe, where the men are even more macho than they are in Australia, and took a few more boulders and shoulders to break it into that world. This is about, and as a wheelchair user, I've been fighting for equity and inclusion and fairness and our rights for all this time. So being in that space is just, like, the sports training I've had has got me ready to do whatever this crazy job is. So, and then we've just changed. You've been reaching out whilst we've been campaigning to get into government and then getting into government. So it's great being in opposition, because all you do is yell out, we want this, that's wrong, that's wrong. But now we're in government. We actually have to do the work and put the things in place for the 4-year program. And my previous chief of staff's hooked in. He's now working for the Premier, so I've got a new chief of staff who's wonderful. But it's good. Personal relationships still make it. Personal relationships change so much. So it was so lovely to sit with you and Lorraine at the games on the weekend.
Yeah, it was beautiful
and
to see
Jan.
Yes. Yeah, we love you. It's it was good. I think those tournaments, having them in Sydney, just meant so much to so many people that have, been a part of basketball for forever. And it's funny, like, talking, even some of the older women from Victoria who, they were on the Opals program when they had to catch boats to go over to South America and all, like, having those conversations. And I think I probably need to get, Eileen Hardwick and some of those women on this podcast as well, because their stories are just, the same. It's just, you wonder how people love it enough to do it like that, and we think we've got it hard now. It's like, no, mate. No, we don't. So it's good. Look, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. I was short, but really appreciate your time. And like I said, we want to do whatever we can to help you raise the profile of the sport, but also just get what you deserve and need to make the program successful. So
no, it's wonderful. And I just think a shout out to everyone listening in wherever you are across Australia. If you just make sure you keep the door open for wheelchair basketball players, no matter where they are. And if someone appears in your world that wants to do a little bit more, take a bit of time to chase up someone who can help that person. And those someones are a lot of the time are older players. We've got this great network now of players around Australia. We really want to see like cheering on Amber, who's my little prodigy, and the amazing work she did at that World Championships. It just gives me so much joy. But there's generations beyond Amber and what the future is, but we are beside you on the court. And I think also part of the journey, we're all going to be there together screaming at 2032. And to have some of the young, how's this, I'll close with this story. At Sydney 2000, there was a busload of young kids with disabilities that had come up from Victoria. And in amongst it all, I went and talked to these young girls who were amputees and had prosthetic legs and things, and I signed their legs and said, one day you're going to be playing for Australia. And that's Kathleen O'Kennedy, who's now paddling for Australia, and Bridie Keane, who was there to talk in Brisbane when we accepted the games. And I've played beside them, but they are the ones that are handing the baton to, who are not just leaders on the court, but leaders off the court. So there's a really important space that sport does for us, giving us leadership skills, but creating and making sure that we nurture that. So there's more people with disabilities out there, and leadership roles is also part of our responsibility, I believe, as sportswomen. Absolutely,
no doubt. Look, thank you. Thank you for your insights and your honesty. And we definitely need to sort of sit back and have a look at, how it's all been handled and where we go from here. Absolutely.
We are beside you, and we want to work with you to get the best outcomes.
You're a legend, Liesl. You are a legend.
Thanks, Lauren. Woohoo.
Thank you so much, Dal. You have a good day, and really appreciate your time.
Indeed. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, and sorry, we're in government now, so I've done the job. No, we've got more to do. Okay. Cheers, Liesl.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.